Hey guys, I just want to make a quick video to show you a cool trick you can do with Warcraft logs to show how much healing you're doing to people afflicted by a certain debuff. So as we all know, like we're familiar with Warcraft logs. You know, a lot of us use this for damage related stuff. You can do lots of cool tricks and see how much damage people are doing to various targets or whatever. You know, a lot of us are familiar with, like, if we wanted to know how much damage was being done to Kingaroth and only Kingaroth, right? We could see who's doing the most damage to Kingaroth, right? Or various things like looking at buffs and casts and timelines and all this, right? Um, and actually, the feature I want to show you is kind of already shown. So basically, you can look at like healing, and you can see how much healing different players do as a result of a particular harmful ability if you just mouse over their bar, right? So if you mouse over here, you can see how much healing Sam did here. But if you mouse over this bar, you can see how much healing he's doing to when Diabolic Bomb is afflicted, so it's like 112 mil. But one thing that I found that's particularly useful is showing how much healing is done only when those things are shown. So instead of just looking, like mousing over here and looking, and then mousing over here and looking, just literally just looking at everyone's healing done by an ability. So the way you do this is you do it through a query. And a query is effectively like all of this stuff you see here is all queries, right? So let me make sure my mouse, I think my mouse is being captured. I don't really know. Yep, it is. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to set a query for Empowered Shock Grenade. Or was it Pulse Grenade? I don't know, whatever. Empowered Pulse Grenade was the ability on Iminar that went on ranged DPS, and happened very often before the first bridge cross and then before the third bridge cross. So what the first thing we're going to do, and I don't really know too much about this, but I just figured this out, is we're going to filter by healing, because the first thing we want to know is how much healing is being done. Okay, we're going to set this to filter. Again, I don't particularly know why, but this is what's going to give us the graph. Sorry. And then we're going to put because we want to filter by another buff here. So if we took this off, we want to filter by buff. But we also we're trying to figure out how much healing is done while someone has a buff or debuff. Okay, so healing, and then we press and. So it's going to bring us up, like if you see here, it says and events any, right? And we're basically going to specify what happens in any. So we want it to be a buff or debuff, and then the buff or debuff we want is called Empowered Pulse Grenade. Okay, there it is. And then the other key thing is make sure you have this. We only want to know the healing done when some players, well, it's like any actors, right, have this thing, right? We could specify and move this to enemies or friendlies in this case, but you don't really need to do that. It just automatically, since Empowered Pulse Grenade can only go on friendlies, you don't need to do that, right? And then we're just going to hit Create Pin. And you're going to see here, this is the time, this graph shows the only time in which Empowered Pulse Grenade exists, and it's only showing the HPS done by the raid when this exists. So effectively, how much healing is each healer doing when Empowered Pulse Grenade shows? And then you can look. And you can see kind of like the HPS performance as a result. So you can see here in this particular log, this was a 5 heal log. This is me healing with Shanil, Sam, Mel, and Sideweaves. I think we pugged because Arvis was missing this log. Yeah, and Cody was tanking on his monk. So here you can see, like, obviously a very large portion of this healing is going to be done by me and Shanila. The way we did the strat, if you remember in the past, is that Shanila and I were hanging towards the back and healing, while the paladins and the monk were running with the tanks and the rest of the melee. So of course in this particular example, you know, you're going to expect to see me and Shanila doing the most amount of healing to people with the Empowered Pulse Grenade, because that's our assignment, right? So I can show this again, and I can modify this really easily. So another really cool debuff to show in this fight is Charge Blast. Remember, on platforms, the first time we're on the second platform, and then the second time we're on the second platform, we have to deal with Charge Blast. That leaves behind a ticking dot, and along with a lot of tank damage that happens, and the way we did the strategy with soaking the circles on the ground, there's a lot of damage done to the raid by Charge Blasts. So I just want to show you this. So we can basically take off Empowered Pulse Grenade. Basically, right now we're just editing the current query we've already made, so we don't have to go back and do the whole process again. I'll show you it again though, so you see it in a second. So we change it to Charge Blast, and we just hit Change Pin. So you can see here, this is when we're on the platform 2 the first time, and then when we're on platform 2 the second time, and this is all Charge Blast damage. And so this is an example of, this is damage that should happen, or they should be healed by the entire raid. Charge Blast hits, the player is low, okay, and then they have a dot on them for I think like 30 seconds or something, right? So they need to be healed after that, right? So kind of what I would expect here is I would expect a lot of instants to hit, so things like Palm, Riptide, Holy Shocks, those kinds of things to hit, and then for Hots to heal over. But you can kind of see here, I mean, there's like pretty low healing from a good portion of the healers, right? It's mostly me and Shanila. So here, if I were looking at this log, I would kind of like, I'd probably ask like Mel or Side, like, you know, could they be doing more here? Now, obviously, like to dig deeper into the problem, I would have to see who they are healing, blah blah blah. But you know, if I were to look at their overall healing and see that their healing during these platforms was low, and they had like a lot of overhealing to other targets, I would wonder, you know, what's going on here with maybe these 2 or 3 players, right? We see like Mel has like pretty high overhealing, so she's like maybe reacting slow, blah blah blah. And a lot of where this ties into is like my, or probably like probably everyone's position that's that heals a lot is that you should show like debuffs. And this is like where I might even think that perhaps maybe Sidewaves and Melinda weren't showing debuffs on their raid frames, or they weren't seeing them in a good way. So they didn't know that these players had charge blasts, and they didn't know that they would need extra healing. It depends, a lot of things vary with what kind of healer you are, in terms of what class you're playing, what's your assignment, these kinds of things. But I would venture to say, like, it's very obvious that Shanila and myself in this case are aware of who has charge blasts and are doing a lot of healing to them. Beyond the fact that they're also like very good healers for healing charge blast damage. Okay, so enough of that log. I'll show you another log. So this is Antoran High Command, and this is a 4 heal. Okay, and one of the two of the debuffs that I wanted to look at here. Sorry, I had sort of was playing around beforehand, and I just wanted to nix that so I could show the query from the beginning. So some of the debuffs here, if I remember, let's see. One was Psychic Assault. So Psychic Assault was when the player went into the pod on Antoran High Command, they took like increasing ticking damage, right? So we can see who does the most healing to increase ticking damage, or to the Psychic Assault. So again, healing, okay? And then you set this to filter. This is going to filter it, right? And give us the graph. So we press AND again, we press buffs or debuffs, we make sure only if aura is present, because I only want to see healing done to a player with Psychic Assault, and then we just have to find Psychic Assault. So, if you remember, Psychic Scarring was the debuff that made it so that you couldn't go back in the pod. So we just check it down here, healing, buffs, debuffs, present on target, Psychic Assault. Great pin. Okay, so here we see, people are going into the pods kind of constantly, and then there's little breaks when the pod swaps here, when you swap out of the pod. So I think, like, we had 3 people go in, it looks like, or maybe this is, yeah, I think 3 people go in, then a pause, and then 3 people go in, then a pause, and 3 people go in. I think we killed a boss, like, shortly after. So you can see Sam does the most healing here, Retribution, to the Psychic Assault. And this could be due to assignment, blah, 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 but you can see that it looks like Cody and Nate are giving some hots to the Psychic Assault, but it's mostly Sam healing it. And that makes sense. Big chunks of damage, it's good for a Holy Paladin, and, there's lapses in tank damage. So it makes sense. And plus, any healing that Sam does to the pod will then go into the beacon, so it kind of can cover for the beacon healing, or the tank healing, right? Right. And so this kind of makes sense. It's kind of a more general thing where probably paladins are better suited for this. You might wonder, like, maybe Shanila should do more healing, but it looks like really all she did was she riptided and then a few healing waves and some chain heals that bounced into it, right? So maybe she could do a little bit better, but we could look at her like Riptide uptime, for instance, and see that to make sure that she has like 100% Riptide uptime on Psychic Assault targets, right? That's something we could do. And she probably doesn't. Who knows? It doesn't particularly matter in the case. So we'll look at another one, and the other debuff I wanted to look at was Entropic Blast. So Entropic Blast, actually no, it wasn't Entropic Blast. It was something else. I'll just look for it. I think it's Chaos Pulse. If you remember, Chaos Pulse is the ability that the boss just randomly does, and it just targets a person and it nukes them all down. So some debuffs here have like more than one thing. I think it's like the initial hit versus something else. So what you can just do is, if you don't know which one it is, you can either try either one or you just put both in, right? I know that there's only one Chaos Pulse that does damage. There's not like another Chaos Pulse within the fight, right? So I changed the pin. So here we can see all the damage, or all the healing done to players with Chaos Pulse over the entire fight, and it happens all the time. It's constantly happening. You get that big stagging debuff, and people dispel it because it increases magic damage, right? So here you can really see like the power of raid healers, and then healers who obviously have debuffs showing. Pretty much everyone here did a really good job. I think the only reason Sam is at the bottom is because these healers are just better suited to this kind of healing, right? But yeah, you can see that all 4 healers here are clearly like doing very good job at healing the Chaos Pulse damage, and you can see that Shanila does the best here. That's probably a little bit related to doing Mythic and Shaman's Mastery and stuff like that, but yeah, whatever. So you can see all healers are doing like a really good job, right? They have the debuff shown. I'll show, let's see, I got 2 more logs to show. And this is kind of a comparison of Coven of Shivara. So if Coven had 2 debuffs, this was Fulminating Pulse and Chilled Blood. And so you can see here that I showed Fulminating Pulse, Chilled Blood, and Chilled Blood. Chilled Blood had a stun debuff and then also the Healing Absorb debuff. So I just put both of them on there because I didn't care to figure out which one was which. And then Fulminating Pulse was the red debuff that did ticking damage and then a big hit at the end. Alright? And this was early on, and I think this is one of the first like couple weeks that Sam was in the raid, and I'm just using it as an example, but I remember we were wiping on, I think we wiped on this boss a couple times. Actually no, we didn't. Oh no, hold on. Yeah, we did. Just once. Let's see. So, and I remember it might have been this raid, but it could have been a raid before or something. But this is around the time where I noticed that some healers were like particularly not healing certain debuffs. I remember looking at problems. This is where I found it. I remember looking at problems and seeing like Chill Blood or whatever. You can see the healing here. You can see how like these 2 healers have way more healing to Chill Blood than them. And I sort of deduced, because the same was true of Fulminating Pulse, maybe not in this poll but another one, that those healers did not see debuffs on their screen. Like they were on their raid frames, they were not showing Chill Blood or Fulminating Pulse, or they were ignoring them. So I remember like commenting that they really should show them, and I knew Shanila and Cody could see them. So you can see here that we're like really Cody carried the crap out of healing Fulminating Pulse and Chilled Blood, right? He does absolutely the largest amount of healing. It's not even close. It's not even. And if you think about it, like this might not be the best. It might not come back completely, but like Fulminating Pulse has a tick at the end and then the debuff expires. So I think like a lot of, because it has a big hit at the end, the Paladins would have a lot of healing after the debuff has gone away. So there might be like some missing Paladin healing here, but there's a good sizable amount of ticking, and there's a lot of stacking in this fight to begin with, that it seems reasonable that Paladin should be like a little stronger here. But I can really honestly just tell you that there was like not a lot of healing being done to these particular things. And I remember, I think I showed you Chill Blood. Chill Blood seems way more advantageous for a Paladin. It's a big healing absorb, and it needs to come off quickly. So that seems like a big singular heals as opposed to like a ticking dot, right? Ticking dot would favor Shanila and Cody here because they're hot, like they have some hots, and then they have more like spread healing as opposed to big like singular cast, right? But Chill Blood is an absorb that's there from the beginning. The second you get the debuff, and the Paladins have very low healing on it. So anyway, suffice to say, I can say the Paladins didn't do well here, right? Well, I can show you a later log, and a lot is going to change, because I can tell you that Sam started to show debuffs in a clearer way, or he started to pay attention to them, whatever happened, but there was a marked change, right? So here is the same thing on Coven. This is a little bit later. I think this is literally 2 weeks later. Chilled Blood, Fulminating Pulse. And you can see it's way better. In terms of a much better spread of healing across everybody. Shanila's a little lower this time, but Sam's doing way better. And this is just like a really good example of healing done to these targets, right? And you can see that it's much better, it's much more reasonable. If we were to check like problems, the problem section, we probably won't see, we do see a Fulminating Death Pulse or whatever, but Chill Blood healing, see Sam's doing way better on Chill Blood healing, Shanila's doing a little worse. Arguably, because Sam is doing better, obviously everyone cannot do, Cody can't carry the healing as much, but this is, like, much more reasonable. Everyone is working as a group to do the necessary healing to Chill Blood and Fulminating Pulse, right? Much quicker, right? And probably Mel is still doing pretty low healing. It happens, right? Yeah, so anyways, guys, that's about wraps it up. I just wanted to show you that. I think it's particularly useful. It's the... Basically, I was writing a big, like, BFA like links related guide, and I wanted to make something to help healers because there's not really like, to be fair, I don't think there's a ton of like really good resources out there for healers that really like explain how to use logs and how to look at things. And I really wanted to know for myself, how do I do this? And I think it's particularly useful. It will be useful for people to be able to like look at their logs and see, look, am I actually healing this debuff a like considerable amount? Is there something more that I can do? And you can do this for all kinds of things. You can look at like certain players, like the tanks, and see how much damage is happening to the tanks when they take a certain debuff. It doesn't have to be just for healing; it could be for all kinds of things. I just thought it's particularly applicable to healers, and it's probably applicable to tanks too. I just haven't looked at it. So I hope this was helpful. Hope you guys use this. Hope you guys can use this to like take your Warcraft logs and improve from them while you do mythic raiding.